Tennessee football could not get it done against Bama despite a 2-score lead at halftime. Could not round up the cigars for a second consecutive year. We've got Vince Ferrara on the line from Sports Talk. You can catch it there on the Sports Animal 99.1 each and every weekday morning, 6 to 9 a.m. Central Time. Vince, we appreciate you stopping by to talk Vols.
Sure, Mark. Great to be with you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. The first thing that I think most people connect with Tennessee possibly not meeting expectations this year would be Joe Milton. Of course, there was some hesitancy to think that he would transition following one of the most efficient quarterbacks in college football, Hendon Hooker. Has a nice bowl game against Clemson, and then comes into this season not a great showing despite the lack of a running game as well, though, in the swamp. And then the performance against Texas A&M has a hot first half, and then things fall apart a bit from there. Your thoughts about Joe Milton?
Well, I wouldn't put the Alabama game on him. That's one. Obviously, he wasn't perfect. Holding on to the football on the backside, sack, strip, fumble, scoop, and score was big because it extended the lead to 2 scores. So that was a big mistake. And you missed Jacob Warren in the red zone when Tennessee had to settle for a field goal. Was not perfect, but he actually did have an excellent game, I thought. And then, look, in the first half, the receivers finally helped him. And you saw the great catch by Squirrel White on what was still a nice throw on Tennessee's touchdown. Had Ramel Keaton also make a catch sort of behind him a little bit or at his back hip. The Tennessee receivers have not been helping him out this year. So that has been a part of the equation. I don't think they get open to the level that they did a year ago when they had 2 NFL receivers in Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman. And this receiving group has not been anywhere close to the way it was last year. Plus, they lost their most reliable target, especially with tough catches blocking in the middle of the field in Brew McCoy a couple of games ago. So that's part of the equation when evaluating Joe Milton. But Saturday in Tuscaloosa didn't come down to Joe Milton. For the season overall, I thought he'd do better than he has, just honestly. I don't think he's been terrible, but I think there are limitations in what the coaching staff will call with him. There's also, until now, we haven't seen the run game element from the quarterback position very much. And that was a huge part of what they did last year, not only in design QB runs, but in scrambling situations when things broke down. He could make things right when protection wasn't perfect or when there weren't receivers open down the field. Hendon Hooker was an eraser last year, and you're seeing that difference this year in going to Joe Milton. But honestly, I didn't expect Joe Milton to be Hendon Hooker. I still thought there would be more accuracy down the field and that he wouldn't sort of get so amped up that he misses on deep balls. People think that he's never gotten better in his 6 years as a quarterback, and that's just not true. He was good in the bowl game and in taking over for Hendon Hooker after he got hurt last year, Mark. And honestly, people don't realize his numbers were as good, if not better, in deep ball throws than Hendon Hooker when he came into games. And you can say, well, those games were against lesser competition or the games are out of hand. Who cares about that? Well, you know what? Some of Joe Milton's stats this year are in those situations and against lesser competition in non-conference where he was missing throws as well. He had 2 throws of longer than 20 yards in that game as well, including the Squirrel White. It's just the inconsistency and the drop-off in accuracy. We expected a little bit more. I certainly did from him, but I also expected more from the offensive line, expected more from the receiving corps. So it's kind of a full picture where you've seen the passing game drop off this year.
Yeah, anybody who saw Joe Milton play at Michigan knows he's a better quarterback today than he was 3 years ago, and also knows that he's got a cannon. So there's a big skill set there for sure. And you're going to miss something when Tillman and Hyatt move on to the NFL, despite myself and others believing that it would just move along and the next wave of players. Squirrel White, you mentioned Brew McCoy, who had an outstanding 2022 and was a bit of a breakout player nationally, that they step in, but they have not reached that level of production. No question about that. Vince, looking at Josh Heupel's decisions, red zone and fourth down, that's always going to gain criticism, even though the analytics now tell us certain things about going forward on fourth down in certain situations, positions on the field that a lot of people still don't buy into. But if you do the math and understand the game, then you understand that there has to be risk reward, and that involves sometimes not converting. Your thoughts about those decisions?
Yeah, Josh Heupel went for it in inside his own 40 in the first half, and they had the quarterback Joe Milton in the shotgun and basically had an outside run with him that was stopped short of the first down marker. And so you had a pretty tight formation, and it was an outside run for him, and that did not work out. So you can question, one, the decision to go for it at that point, give Alabama a short field. Tennessee's defense was able to stiffen up in that situation. And then maybe even the play calling as well. This Tennessee team, like a lot of teams with the modern offenses, even in short yardage, they're in the gun or pistol. And now you have the running backs or the quarterbacks at a standstill position trying to get momentum and get a first down when you don't need a whole lot. And Tennessee doesn't do anything under center. They don't do the brotherly shove or the bush push, any of that kind of stuff. Why that is, can't tell you, but I know they probably don't practice it much, and that might be a big factor in why they don't call it during games. But maybe since you've struggled in short yardage again, maybe practice it. So we'll see how much they admit to how much they work on it, if that's the reason why they don't. But I think that one is questionable, but maybe the play call is the bigger one. I had a bigger problem with them going for it up 2017 in the third quarter at your own 47-yard line. It's not only 4th and 1, it's about 4th and a yard and a half. And Tennessee went for it there. And Josh Heupel said in the postgame that, hey, we liked our play call, so we thought it would work, so we called it. Well, sure. All of your plays that you have in your playbook you think are going to work, but they don't always work. So you have to factor in, as you mentioned, Mark, the risk and reward in that situation. Alabama had already jumped out in that third quarter with 10 points to cut the lead to just 3 for Tennessee. You don't convert there, you give Alabama a short field, and that's exactly what happened. Alabama stuffed them, then 5 plays, they're quickly in the end zone, and now Alabama has the lead, and then the place is going nuts. So now you've made it even more of an avalanche than you really needed to, whereas Alabama had momentum, but then you punt the ball with your punter that had the best punting average in a single game in Tennessee football history at 53.2 yards per punt, including a 71-yarder. He has been terrific since the season opener. Use him to try to pin Alabama back, force them to maybe have a limited playbook, try to come out of their own end, and maybe your defense gets a stop, stops the momentum, gets it back, and gets the football back, and then you can start over with good field position around midfield. I wouldn't have done that personally. I know there's plenty of fans that have been talking about that. I just would have let your defense and special teams go to work for you rather than that risk reward in that situation near midfield. And then the red zone, I thought Tennessee gave up on the run too quickly when running the ball was what got them into some of those red zone situations. Certainly the pass game was working in the first half as well, but I think Tennessee needs to stay in their normal formations, even in short yardage, and then not give up on the run when they get into the red zone. And they also slow down the pace a lot, Mark. And the tempo of this offense is in the way they're able to spread the field. Those are 2 huge advantages. So what does Tennessee do in short yardage? They slow it down and they tighten up the formation, just like that 4th down at your own 47. They also ran their best running back in open field in Dylan Sampson, who has run between the tackles, but he's not their best runner between the tackles. He's more of a space guy and a potential home run hitter. But he was the guy carrying the ball at that time rather than your more physical break tackle backs in Jalen Wright and Jabari Small. So there was a lot of things you can question about all that. And then the pace and the spreading of the field, they give up on those advantages for some reason in red zone and in short yardage.
And Vince, the punting is a better option this season than it was last season because the defense is better. I don't want to overplay it, but it's decidedly better, correct?
Much better. You're not overplaying it. Now, they were not as good against Alabama in that second half avalanche for the Tide. They weren't able to get to Jalen Milroe. They overran him and didn't keep contained, allowed him to leak out of the pocket. Bama did a lot of creative things with their run game that kept Tennessee off balance. Balls missed on some tackles. They weren't as good. They've been pretty dominant at the line of scrimmage with their front seven with sacks and tackles for loss. But Alabama adjusts. They did against Texas A&M. It was almost the exact same thing. A&M dominated the line of scrimmage, sacks, tackles for loss, and then halftime adjustments, and then A&M couldn't get to Milroe, and he's hitting deep shots on you, and they win the game. And that was the case against Tennessee. Tennessee missed out when they were in control of the line of scrimmage in the first half, or had the advantage, I should say. They just didn't separate on the scoreboard. They had to settle in the red zone for 2 field goals. So it ended up being 20-7 at the half, whereas maybe you're up 21 and then Alabama then is forced to have to come back 3 scores. And then maybe they can't do all those creative things they were doing with their motions and run game and quarterback runs in the second half. And maybe they have to play a little bit more one-dimensional and throwing the football every down. Now maybe your pass rush can pin their ears back and get after the quarterback like they typically do on third down. Another smart thing Alabama did is they were taking their deep shots on first down. So now that's on tape that, hey, when Tennessee can't be as aggressive with their pass rush on first down because you don't know if you're going to run or pass, now that's when what teams are going to start to do on them more. Tennessee's got to be able to adjust. And clearly the team that did better in adjusting in that game was Alabama.
We've got Vince Ferrara on the line from the Sports Animal 99.1. You can catch him each and every weekday, 6 to 9 Central Time. And I'm guessing, Vince, that for those folks that aren't in the area to catch the traditional radio, that they can catch you online.
That's right. 6 to 9, sorry to correct it, 6 to 9 a.m., 5 to 8 Central. And I've actually done shows when we were at SEC Football Media Days Central Time. Man, that 3:30 a.m. alarm clock for 5 a.m. Central was, that's tough. But yeah, we're online streaming 991thesportsanimal.com. Also on the Sports Animal app, you can download it and listen to us wherever you happen to be, smart speakers, all that kind of fun stuff. Yeah. So, and then we podcast the show on our website as well, 991thesportsanimal.com. I have blogs there. We have plenty of UT coverage on that website.
I have family in Nashville. They're on Central Time, so I get that mixed up sometimes. There's a dividing line in there, Alabama, Tennessee. I worked in Mississippi for years on Central Time. Vince, you're entrenched in the culture. You know the Vols about as well as anyone, not just on the field, but again, Tennessee culture. Describe the Kentucky rivalry. At what level is that rivalry?
Well, it certainly doesn't compare to Florida or Alabama. Those, depending on your generation, those are the 2 biggest rivals for Tennessee. Kentucky is like Vanderbilt. It doesn't matter how good Kentucky is or how bad Tennessee is. There is absolute expectation and demand to beat Kentucky. Period. Their school is Kentucky in football. Your school is Tennessee in football. End of story. Nothing else matters. So you want to get the fans fired up and mad this season more so than what we've seen because of 2 losses. Let them lose to Kentucky. Now, part of the equation is Kentucky's always going to be fired up. They're coming off of a open week where they're going to put in new stuff for Tennessee. And then who knows how much they're able to improve their pass game, where Devin Leary, their quarterback, has been underwhelming. I thought he would be excellent and an upgrade for them. He has not to this point. We'll see what it looks like coming out of the bye week. And then Tennessee hasn't really proven that they can win on the road in a long time. I mean, you really have to go back to pre-Georgia last year, where they've been able to win a road game in a hostile environment. I mean, this year, Alabama and Florida. Last year, South Carolina and Georgia. All of those are multiple score or blowout losses as well. So it's not just the results, it's how they played. And then when things go bad, things have gone totally south. So Tennessee's got some proving to do that they can flush that and win this kind of game where there's absolute expectations to win. So there'll be Tennessee fans that go up there, but it'll be loud for a Big Blue Nation up there as well. And this is not a gimme. I think it was for Tennessee fans. It always is an expectation to win, but it's, even though Kentucky slipped recently, it's still a little bit more in the balance than I think Tennessee fans would have hoped because of Tennessee's lack of explosiveness on offense, even though that defense overall this season has been much, much improved, as you alluded to earlier.
Yeah, it's certainly a flawed Kentucky team and not the Devin Leary that we saw at NC State, 35 touchdowns and 5 picks a couple of years ago. Despite having one of the better wide receiver rooms in the conference and one of the best in Kentucky history that he's not taking advantage of. But after that Florida game, we were a bit oversold on what they could be and that they could possibly challenge Georgia, which leads me to this, Vince, with this second SEC loss. Even if there's a upset win at home against Georgia later in the season, to think that Georgia is going to lose another game is, a bit of a long shot. So what is Tennessee playing for at this point?
Well, I think if Tennessee was to run the table, they're not going to get in the college football playoff, but you can still get to a New Year's Six bowl. I think that would be your best case scenario. Now, right now, I don't see Tennessee beating Georgia. We'll see what Georgia looks like. Maybe no Brock Bowers. We'll see what they look like without Brock Bowers. I still think they'll be fine because they do have recruiting depth at that tight end position. They have wide receivers that they fully haven't been able to use or will probably elevate their game. So I think Georgia will still be fine, but you never know. So there's still plenty that's out there for them. How do they handle it? Some teams, when you take the biggest goals out of the equation, they don't handle it really well. We'll see with this group that's very different, even though they've got a lot of seniors, still transfer portal, freshmen, those kind of things that have been drawn into the mix into this year's team. We'll see how they handle it. They bounced back from South Carolina pretty well last year when they were knocked to the deck and blowing out Vanderbilt and then winning the Orange Bowl. We'll see if they can stay motivated. Even at 9-3, I think that's a solid season, just one game behind last year's regular season with a chance to still win double digits depending on the bowl game matchup. So that won't be a lost season because then everyone's going to be turned to and excited about Nico. You feel like you can bounce back. But anything sub 9 wins, I think fans will be pretty upset or disappointed if it's anything other than 9-3 when it's all said and done in the regular season.
Excited about Nico, excited about new opponents in the SEC, excited about an expanded playoff where you don't have to get past that monster Georgia to get to the 12-team playoff.
As far as Kentucky, the bye week probably couldn't have come at a better time. Losing 2 straight, losing at Georgia, pretty much everyone expected that, maybe just not the way that they lost. And then 2 weeks ago against Missouri, jump out to a 14-0 lead. Everything's looking great. Like, okay, we got this game, we're going to win. And then just the wheels completely fell off. Penalties, turnovers, just, simple, mistakes. Everything you should be not doing in week 7, they were still doing it. I think, the final stat line, Kentucky had more penalty yards than passing yards. And you're not going to win. You're not going to win too many games in the SEC like that. So, and of course, with the bye week, it also gives a chance to get healthy. Trevin Wallace, star linebacker, did not play against Missouri. Keyshawn Silver up front on the defensive line did not play. On the offensive side, Tavian Robinson and Barryon Brown have both been dinged up since the Florida game. And the thought is, or the hope is, with that extra week, now that all these guys will be back and ready to go. One guy who won't play is Jalen Geiger, who's still going to be out due to an injury, probably for a few more weeks. So, hopefully a lot of things get fixed on the bye week. We'll see come Saturday night.
You mentioned those passing statistics compared to the penalty yards, and we are still waiting for Kentucky to put it all together in the passing game, because they certainly have the weapons on the outside to take advantage of. But between the offensive pass protection and also Devin Leary's inconsistency, it's just not happening.
Oh, you're exactly right, and that's been one of the most puzzling things I think this entire season is that Leary just, quite frankly, hasn't looked like the guy that he was at North Carolina State. Now, I don't know if it's, playing under center, because I believe before he'd always run everything out of the shotgun. I don't know if that's been some of the issue, but if you watch some of these games, I mean, the Kentucky's offensive line, if you remember back to 2022, Will Levis is running for his life pretty much the entire game, like every game. The offensive line, the Big Blue Wall, has done a great job this year. It's just been like timing, and Kentucky, the biggest thing, it's not all on Leary, is drop passes. I believe there was a stat. Kentucky is not a category you want to be tops in the nation in, like dropping like 12.5% of the passes, thrown their way. And then if you can't hold on to the ball, then you're not gonna move the offense. And then there's been times where guys have been open and Leary has just missed them, like either overthrown them, underthrown them. Receiver runs one run route and he's thinking they're doing something else. So that's been the biggest mystery so far. Everyone was all excited, yours truly, about Liam Cohen 2.0 here because of what happened in 2021. And so far it's just not hit like everyone thought it would. But maybe Saturday against Tennessee would be a good time to get everything going in the right direction.
Yeah, Tennessee comes to town. We talked some Tennessee football with a contributor a few days ago. How would you term this rivalry in terms of importance and how unique it is to the Kentucky faithful?
Oh, I think obviously it's a huge rivalry, even though looking at it from a Kentucky standpoint, it's not. You're a lot happier looking at it from the Tennessee perspective than you are the Kentucky perspective, because I believe I think it's the 119th time that they played, and just in the 2000s, I think Tennessee is 20-3, I believe. So just from the game perspective, it's not very pretty on the Kentucky side, but it's another one of those things with a measuring stick kind of thing. Kentucky has flipped the switch against Florida and has honestly dominated that series the last few years, but they've never been able to get over that hump against Tennessee, even like 2018 and 2021, where Kentucky had the better team, but Tennessee still won the game. I think it's huge if Kentucky can win this one. Obviously, it's going to be good because it'll get them 6 wins and be bowl eligible. But another thing you and I were talking about before we got started, this could be one of the last times, with the new scheduling, Kentucky and Tennessee may not play every year. And I believe, with the exception of 1943 during World War II, I think Kentucky's played going back to like the 1910s. Kentucky and Tennessee has played every year, so it'd be really weird. But it's the new age of college football we're in, to not see Kentucky and Tennessee play every year, because for years they played for I believe it was the beer barrel, the bourbon barrel, that they stopped giving that out as a trophy. But like I said, it would be huge for Kentucky to finally get to that place where they feel like they're even with Tennessee. And of course, everyone is a Tennessee fan, just heard that statement and is just going to flock and flood your comment section, which is fine. That's what Vol Nation does, and that's cool. But to me, it's going to be it's going to be sad if Kentucky, even though Kentucky hasn't beaten Tennessee very consistently, it's going to be sad if they don't end up playing each other every year.
Folks, we have a new SEC channel launched about 6 weeks ago. Please check it out. And you may be watching it right now, depending on where you're watching this video. But please subscribe and help support the channel. Give us a like as well if you enjoy the content. Got Kevin McGuffey here from Last Word on College Football, breaking down the Cats 5-2, 2-2 in the SEC. Looking in the mirror at Tennessee, 5-2, 2-2 in the SEC. So, of course, bowl standings are in the mix, and the rivalry, bragging rights, and all of that. But beyond that, as we talked about before we started to record, and a little bit on here as well, Mizzou has actually got the best shot, and they've emerged as the team with no losses in the conference, or they do have a loss in the conference. I'm losing track now. That's right. They beat Kansas State outside the conference, but they lost an in-conference game. But they'll have the head-to-head with Georgia to be able to then put themselves in position in the East. They lost to LSU a few weeks ago.
Right.
That now we have a situation where the likes of Tennessee and Kentucky in particular, since we're focused on this game, really have no realistic shot of winning the East now after having lost to Georgia directly. So is there a portion of the fan base, Kevin, who sees this as, oh, this is great, Mark Stoops is doing a great job, he's elevated us considerably, but now we seem to be stuck in this place of we're just playing for a better bowl game every year and a record that looks good and respectable rather than having a realistic shot at playing for a championship?
There's, I would say you are correct there, especially on message boards and some Facebook groups and stuff. You know, there's some people that, but what I like to say is you think about where the program was, and I've talked about this, where the program was before Stoops took over, and how bad it was and what he's done. But there are people who say that, you know, basically right now, Kentucky, 7-8 wins, that's pretty much the, that's pretty much the ceiling every year. And we just have to accept that and just move on. And then you have some people, you know, out there in the fringes like, well, basically Stoops is taking us as far as we can. Now we need somebody else, which I think, to my knowledge, I think that's insane. But there is a portion that thinks that, yeah, there's 7-8 wins going to, you know, they're on a 7 straight bowl game streak, which has never been done in school history. Like I said, I think Stoops has been perfect for the job. I don't know. I'm sure there's players out there. If Stoops was to ever leave, probably John Summerall at Troy would be the first person I would call. You know, former Kentucky assistant who's done great things down there. If something like that were to happen, that's who, because, you know, you still get the persistent Mark Stoops to Iowa rumors. And there's been some, you know, Mark Stoops to Michigan State rumors. I don't see that one. I think Iowa, if he ever left, that might be the job. But, you know, I don't know if Ferentz is going anywhere anytime soon. We'll see how that works out. But yeah, I think, you know, most people are happy, I think, with the 7-8 wins, and then you get that 10-win season occasionally. But, you know, there's always and you should want more. You know, you don't want to just be consistent or complacent and say, "Yay, we got 7 wins, woohoo!" You know, they want to be competing for the SEC title. They want to be competing for of course, there won't be divisions now, but they want to get to that next level. And like I said, with Texas and Oklahoma coming in next year, it's going to be really interesting to see how this balances out, how the schedules balance out, and how Kentucky does. Because right now they've got a great recruiting class coming in for 2024. So, you know, it's just a matter. I don't know how you get over that hump. You know, I really thought they were going to play much better against Georgia than they did. That was just total. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but just disappointment. And then to start out so well against Missouri and then have it end like it did. So kind of a long way around. I don't know. There's some people, like I said, that are happy with 7-8 wins, but, you know, you should obviously be trying to get more. You know, if the ultimate goal was make it to Atlanta for an SEC championship game.
Kentucky and Tennessee getting together. If you want to get into the stadium, go to TicketSmarter, ticketsmarter.com. TicketSmarter app. You can download the app. It's the best platform on the secondary ticket market, safe and secure. Use our promo code BIG. You get $10 off of a purchase of at least $100 or BIG20 of a ticket purchase of at least $300 right there at ticketsmarter.com. Use the app as well. All right, Kevin, appreciate you stopping by and breaking things down for us.